The first time I heard the sound, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Deep in the woods, everything sounds stranger, sharper, and more alive. I had set up camp by myself, something I'd done countless times before. But there was something different about this place. The trees leaned in too close. The shadows stretched longer than they should have, and the air felt too thick to breathe easily. It started just after midnight. I was lying in my tent, the cold seeping through the thin fabric, when I heard a faint rustling outside. Not the kind animals make. No, this sounded deliberate, almost careful. At first I told myself it was just the wind moving the underbrush. I tried to sleep, but then came the whispering. It wasn't loud, more like a breath against my ear, but unmistakably words. I couldn't understand them, not fully. They slipped around my mind like smoke. I sat up, heart hammering in my chest, straining to hear. Silence. Dead, heavy silence. Even the crickets had gone mute. Curiosity won out over fear. I grabbed my flashlight, unzipped the tent, and stepped into the night. The beam of light barely pierced the darkness, revealing only gnarled trees and patches of thick mist curling at my feet. The air was colder now, unnaturally cold. My breath plumed out in front of me in thick clouds. Then I heard it again, that same whisper, but now it was clearer, closer. It was calling my name. Every instinct screamed at me to go back inside the tent, zip it shut, and wait until morning. But against all reason, I found myself moving toward the sound. My boots crunched softly against the frost-bitten leaves as I pushed deeper into the woods. The whisper floated just ahead, always just out of reach, like it was leading me somewhere. Sometimes it sounded like a woman, sometimes like a child, but always using my name in that pleading, broken tone. I stumbled over roots and ducked under low-hanging branches, the beam of my flashlight jittering wildly across the trees. Minutes, or maybe hours passed. Time felt slippery, distorted out there. Just when I was about to turn back, I saw a shape between the trees. A pale figure, standing perfectly still. I stopped breathing. I could only see part of it, but it was enough. A hand, impossibly long fingers curling against a tree trunk, and part of a face. Hollow-eyed, mouth stretched too wide in a smile that didn't belong. The figure beckoned to me. I wanted to run. God, I wanted to turn around and sprint back to camp. But my legs refused to move. It was as if invisible hands were holding me in place. I could feel a humming under my skin, a low vibration that pulled me closer. The whispers grew louder now, overlapping, crashing over each other in a maddening chorus. My name, over and over and over, until it was no longer a word, but just a horrible noise drilling into my brain. I dropped the flashlight. The darkness swallowed me whole, but somehow I could still see the figure, its outline glowing faintly, like the afterimage left when you stare at the sun too long. And then it turned and walked away, deeper into the woods. Without thinking, without questioning, I followed. The forest seemed to change around me. Trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their bark rippling as if breathing. The ground under my boots grew soft and spongy, sucking at my steps like it wanted to swallow me whole. I tried to call out, to demand that things stop, but my voice cracked uselessly in my throat. The figure moved faster now, almost gliding over the forest floor. I chased it, the sound of my heart pounding in my ears louder than the whispers. The air grew colder with every step, until I could barely feel my fingers. Finally, the figure stopped at the edge of a clearing. I staggered to a halt, chest heaving. Before me, illuminated by a sickly green light I couldn't trace to any source, was a small crumbling cabin. Its windows were black, empty eyes watching me. The door hung off one hinge, creaking softly in the still air. The figure stood at the door, its head tilting slowly, unnaturally, inviting me in. I don't know why I stepped forward. Every part of me screamed against it, but my body moved on its own, drawn like a moth to a flame. I crossed the clearing, each step heavier than the last, until I stood at the threshold. The inside was worse than I could have imagined. The floor was littered with scraps of torn fabric and broken furniture. Strange symbols had been carved into the walls, deep gouges that seemed to pulse in the dim light. The air stank of decay and something far fouler, something wrong. I turned to look at the figure, to demand answers, but it was gone. And then I realized I wasn't alone. From the darkness inside the cabin, something began to move. I couldn't see it fully, but I heard it. The scraping of claws against wood, the wet sound of something dragging itself closer. I stumbled backward, but the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. I screamed and pounded on it, but it wouldn't budge. The room grew colder, the air thicker, as the thing inside the cabin drew near. I turned, pressing my back to the door, and in the faint light I saw them. Faces, dozens of faces, half melted into the walls, their mouths twisted open in eternal screams. Their eyes rolled to follow me as the creature emerged fully from the shadows. It was nothing human, a mass of limbs and mouths and empty gaping eye sockets. It lurched toward me, and the last thing I remember was the feeling of icy fingers wrapping around my throat. When I woke, I was lying at the edge of the woods, my tent still visible in the distance, collapsed and torn. Morning light filtered weakly through the trees. My body ached like I had been beaten. Scratches and bruises covered my skin. My throat was raw, like I had been screaming for hours. I stumbled back to camp, packed up my things with shaking hands, and fled that place without looking back. Even now, safe at home, sometimes, late at night, I hear the whispers again, calling my name, begging me to come back. After that night, I swore to myself I'd never set foot in those woods again. But promises made in fear are easy to break with time. Months passed, and against all reason, against the gnawing warnings that kept me awake some nights, I found myself back there. I told myself it was for closure, to prove that what happened wasn't real, just a nightmare that had lingered too long in my mind. This time, I wasn't camping. I planned a day hike, staying close to the paths, avoiding any deep dives into the trees. I brought a friend too, Daniel. He didn't know the full story. I gave him some vague excuse about wanting company for a memory trip. Maybe part of me believed having someone else there would keep whatever darkness lurked in those woods at bay. For the first hour, everything was normal. The sun hung bright and heavy overhead, filtering through the leaves in golden beams. Birds chirped, the wind rustled the branches, all the comforting sounds of a living forest. I almost laughed at myself for ever being afraid. Then we came to a fork in the path. The left trail was clear and well worn, but the right one, something about it seemed wrong. The trees grew tighter there, their branches knitting together into a dark tunnel. The air felt cooler, heavier. Daniel wanted to stay on the main trail, but I felt pulled toward that darker path. like something was calling to me again. I told him we'd only explore it for a few minutes, just to satisfy my curiosity. Against his better judgment, he followed. The deeper we went, the darker it became. The canopy overhead thickened until hardly any sunlight reached us. The sounds of the forest faded away, swallowed by the growing silence. Even our footsteps seemed muted, as if the ground itself was muffling the noise. That's when we saw it. At first I thought it was just a trick of the light, a darker patch among the shadows ahead. But as we drew closer, I realized it was a figure, tall, impossibly thin, standing between two massive oaks. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It just stood there, facing us. Daniel froze beside me. I could hear his breathing quicken, ragged and shallow. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking the oppressive silence. The figure didn't respond. It didn't even flinch. We stood there, locked in some invisible standoff. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't. Not yet. Something about the way it stood there, so unnervingly still, held me captive. Then, without warning, it shifted. It didn't walk toward us. It slid. One moment it was 10 feet away, and in the blink of an eye, it was closer. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and grabbed Daniel's arm. He didn't move. His eyes were wide, pupils blown, face pale as paper. I shouted at him, but he just stared at the figure as if hypnotized. I yanked him hard, breaking whatever spell had gripped him. We turned and ran. The forest warped around us as we fled. The trees seemed to stretch and twist, closing in. Branches clawed at our clothes and faces. I could hear footsteps behind us. Heavy, deliberate, gaining ground fast. I didn't dare look back. We crashed through the undergrowth, tearing through thorn bushes, slipping on moss-covered rocks. The path was gone. All sense of direction vanished. It was just us, the endless trees, and the thing chasing us. My legs burned, lungs screamed for air, but still we ran. At some point, Daniel stumbled and fell hard, twisting his ankle. He cried out in pain, clutching his leg. I skidded to a halt, torn between running and helping him. But before I could react, a cold shadow fell over us. Slowly, against every instinct, I turned to look. It stood less than 10 feet away now. In the dim light, I could see it more clearly, though I wish I hadn't. Its body was wrong. Not just thin but stretched, like it had been pulled too far. Its arms hung nearly to the ground, fingers long and broken at odd angles. Its head was misshapen, a mass of shifting darkness with no features I could see, except for two glinting points of light where eyes should have been. It tilted its head at us, almost curiously, and took a single, sliding step closer. Daniel whimpered, trying to crawl backward, but his injury slowed him. In that moment, something primal surged up inside me. I grabbed a fallen branch and swung it wildly at the figure. The wood passed through it, as if it weren't even there, throwing me off balance. It leaned closer, and for the first time, I heard it. A low, rattling sound, like bones grinding together. Summoning every ounce of courage, I hauled Daniel up, throwing his arm over my shoulder, and together we staggered away from it. The figure didn't follow immediately. It just watched us, that awful rattling sound growing louder, vibrating in my teeth. We moved as fast as we could, half carrying, half dragging Daniel, until finally, miraculously, we stumbled back onto the main trail. The moment we crossed onto it, everything changed. The forest lightened, sounds returned, birds sang again. And when I dared to look back, the figure was gone. We didn't stop. We didn't speak. We limped all the way back to the car and sped out of that place without a second thought. It's been weeks now, and Daniel still won't talk about what we saw. He barely speaks at all. Sometimes I catch him staring at dark corners, flinching at shadows that no one else sees. And me? Some nights, when I'm half asleep, I hear it again. The grinding, rattling noise. Somewhere just beyond the edge of my dreams. Waiting. Watching. After that night, Daniel was never the same. Neither was I, honestly. I thought we were lucky to have made it out, to have escaped whatever malevolent thing lurked in those woods. I thought it was over. I was wrong. A week after our encounter, Daniel went missing. One evening, he just disappeared. His phone dead, his house empty. No signs of forced entry, no notes, nothing. It was like he had been plucked out of existence. The police searched the area, asked questions, posted missing person flyers. But I already knew. Deep down, I knew the woods had taken him. Everyone assumed he ran away, suffering some kind of mental break, but I knew Daniel better than that. He was terrified. He would have never gone near the woods again by choice. The guilt gnawed at me. If I hadn't convinced him to follow me into that darker path, he would still be here. A few days later, two more friends, Luke and Jenna, decided they wanted to help me search. Against every instinct screaming inside me, I agreed. Part of me wanted to believe that maybe, somehow, we could find Daniel. Maybe he was just lost, hurt, waiting for help. We set out early in the morning, loaded with flashlights, extra batteries, water, everything we could think of. The forest looked different now, colder, hungrier. We followed the main trail for hours before splitting up. Jenna stayed behind at a landmark, a crooked tree shaped like an archway, while Luke and I pressed further in. We promised not to go far, to meet back within an hour. We pushed deeper into the woods, calling Daniel's name every few minutes. Our voices bounced off the trees strangely, coming back warped and distant. At some point, we found an old, broken-down cabin, nothing but a rotting frame and shattered windows. It felt wrong, standing there like a dying creature at the heart of the woods. But Luke insisted we check it out. Maybe Daniel had sought shelter. The floor groaned under our weight as we stepped inside. It smelled of mold, rot, and something else. Something metallic, like blood left too long in the air. The walls were covered in scratches. Deep, violent marks, some so high up it was impossible to imagine a human had made them. I wanted to leave. Every fiber of my body screamed to get out. But Luke called out, saying he found something. It was Daniel's jacket, crumpled in a corner, torn and stained. That's when the door slammed shut. We spun around, but no one was there. Then we heard it. That rattling, grinding sound. So close now, it felt like it was inside the cabin with us. The temperature dropped sharply. I could see my breath misting out in front of me. The shadows in the corners seemed to pulse, breathing slowly, rhythmically. We bolted for the door, ramming it open with our shoulders. The force sent us sprawling into the dirt outside. We didn't stop running. We sprinted back toward the crooked tree where Jenna was supposed to be waiting. But when we got there, she was gone. Her backpack was there, tossed on the ground, one strap torn. Her flashlight lay nearby, still flickering weakly. Luke shouted her name, voice cracking with panic. No answer. I stood there, heart hammering, scanning the woods. That's when I saw movement. Something slipping between the trees, just out of sight. A shape, a shadow. I grabbed Luke's arm, urging him to move, but he was frozen. staring into the darkness. And then he was gone. 1 second he was there, the next, nothing. No scream, no struggle. Just gone. Like the woods had swallowed him whole. I stood there, stunned, unable to breathe. Something brushed against the back of my neck. Cold skeletal fingers. I spun around, swinging my flashlight wildly. Nothing. But I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel it, breathing behind me, watching. I ran, blindly crashing through the woods, not caring about direction, not caring about anything but getting away. The forest seemed endless, twisting, alive. I tripped, fell, scrambled back up, my hands bleeding from the rough ground. Branches tore at my clothes and skin. My flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into total darkness. That's when I heard them. Whispers, faint, broken, like dozens of voices all speaking at once. Somewhere deep in the blackness, I heard Daniel's voice calling my name, weak and desperate, and then Jenna's, and Luke's. I stumbled forward, drawn to the sound, heart shattering inside my chest. I thought I saw them. 3 figures standing together in a small clearing, faces pale, eyes hollow. They beckoned to me. I took a step forward, and then something shifted in their faces. Their smiles widened unnaturally, splitting their cheeks. Their eyes turned black and empty. Their bodies stretched and twisted, becoming those same impossible shapes I had seen before. I screamed and turned away, running blindly through the dark. I don't remember how I found my way out. Maybe something took pity on me. Maybe it was just dumb luck. But eventually, the trees thinned, the sunlight broke through, and I collapsed onto the roadside, gasping for air, my mind a shattered mess. No one believed my story. They said trauma had warped my memories, that Daniel, Jenna, and Luke were just lost, that the woods were vast and dangerous and unforgiving. But I know the truth. The woods are alive, and they are hungry. At night, when everything is still, I sometimes hear scratching at my window, whispers in the dark, calling my name. And deep down, a part of me knows I left a piece of myself behind in those woods. And it's only a matter of time before they come to collect the rest. For a while, I tried to rebuild my life, to forget the horrors of those woods. But forgetting isn't so easy when the past clings to you like a living thing, pulling you back, inch by inch. I started seeing them everywhere. At first it was small things. A flash of Daniel's face in a crowded street, Jenna's laughter in the wind, the silhouette of Luke standing at the edge of a dark alley. Every time I turned, they were gone, but the air felt heavier, colder, like their presence still lingered just beyond my reach. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in those endless woods, running through the darkness, the whispers growing louder, the shadows closing in. I would wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, feeling as if something had just been standing over me, watching. One night, after yet another sleepless stretch, I decided to drive. Just drive, anywhere, to escape the suffocating walls of my apartment. I didn't realize until it was too late that my car had taken me back near the forest. The trees loomed ahead, dark and massive, against the night sky. I told myself to turn back. I didn't. Somewhere deep inside, I understood. This wasn't a coincidence. They were calling me back, and I was too tired to resist. I parked the car at the edge of the woods and stepped into the trees. The forest welcomed me like an old friend. The moment I crossed the threshold, the world shifted. The sounds of the town disappeared, swallowed by a deafening silence. The moon overhead seemed dimmer, and the path beneath my feet twisted in unfamiliar ways. I moved blindly, guided by an unseen force, deeper and deeper into the belly of the woods. It wasn't long before I found them, Daniel, Jenna, Luke. They stood together in a small clearing, illuminated by a sickly greenish glow that seemed to seep from the ground itself. Their faces were pale, hollow, their eyes empty voids, but it wasn't just them. Behind them, hundreds of figures stood, half-formed, shadowy things, their features twisted in pain and rage. Some were old, some young, all lost souls, trapped in the forest, their bodies stolen, their spirits corrupted. The curse of the deep woods. They had been waiting. For me, Daniel stepped forward, his voice a rasp that barely resembled the friend I had known. "You left us." I stumbled back, shaking my head. "I tried to save you." "You ran," Jenna hissed, her face contorting into a mask of fury. "You left us to die." "I couldn't." My voice broke. "I couldn't save anyone. I barely saved myself." Luke's laugh was a hollow, broken sound. "Exactly." The ground beneath me cracked open with a sudden violent shudder. Black tendrils like twisted roots burst forth, wrapping around my ankles, pulling me down. I fought, kicking and screaming, but it was useless. The lost souls closed in around me, their hands cold as ice, their touch burning my skin with an unnatural chill. "You will stay with us," Daniel whispered, his face inches from mine. "You will pay," Jenna added, her voice dripping with venom. "You will become one of us," Luke finished, smiling that impossibly wide, broken smile. The tendrils dragged me into the earth, the world going black. But just before the darkness swallowed me completely, I remembered something. An old story my grandfather used to tell about the deep woods. A way to break the curse. A name. The original name of the forest before the curse took hold. A name so old it was nearly forgotten. I screamed the name into the darkness, my voice staring from my throat. For a moment everything stopped. The tendrils recoiled. The lost souls froze, their empty eyes widening in shock. The ground shook violently, the air splitting with a deafening roar. Light burst from the trees, blinding and pure, tearing through the darkness like a blade. The lost souls screamed, a sound so full of rage and sorrow that it shattered the night. The forest itself seemed to wail in pain as the curse was ripped apart at the seams. When I woke, I was lying at the edge of the woods, the sun rising in the distance. The trees stood silent and still, no longer menacing, no longer alive. The deep woods curse was broken, but not without a cost. Daniel, Jenna, Luke, all the others. They were truly gone now, set free from their torment, but lost forever. And me? I'm free, mostly. But some nights, when the wind howls through the trees, I swear I still hear them. Faint whispers calling my name. Not in anger this time, but in sadness. A reminder. The deep woods may have been freed, but it will never forget. And neither will I.